There are all these memes that go around that say, how lucky am I that I didn't get what I want? How lucky am I that which I was so invested in, that I'd really hoped for, well, it didn't work out. And there are many reasons why we would consider ourselves lucky for the things that ended or the things that never were, especially in retrospect. But that doesn't take away from the fact, in the moment, they can feel challenging, especially if we've invested so much of ourselves in what it was that ultimately ended up being just a hope or a mirage or an illusion. Now, this year, next week, technically, is when we are going to have what some astrologers call the luckiest day of the year. And that is when we have the sun meeting Jupiter in the sky on the 24th of June. However, this year is different. That luck, of course, it's still there, but there is a sense of disappointment, a sense of our best efforts being washed away, and that if we stay in the disappointment, we might not recognize what actually is really good about what's taking place now. Now, a lot of these big energies, they actually kick off this week, because it is going to be on the 15th and 19th of June, respectively. Well, that is when Jupiter is going to make some of the most important alignments that are to take place of this year. And we've got plenty of amazing alignments happening this year, as Jupiter first squares Saturn and then Neptune, with Jupiter representing optimism and possibility and faith, but Neptune representing the dream and the fantasy on high. It is going to be these square configurations that make us feel as if there is something that's got to be better. How can we make it happen? There's something that should be working out here, but it doesn't feel like it's coming together, and that really is okay. There are times when it's a lot more about the effort. It's about showing yourself something, about what you're willing to actually do, what time or other resources you are willing to sacrifice in order to have what it is that you're really wanting or really hoping for. But it is also really important to stay flexible along the way, because that's when we start creating a partnership with the universe. And even in those moments that feel challenging, that feel as if all of our best efforts, well, they might feel now like they've just washed away. Even that might be an illusion, because nothing is ever wasted. No energy, no effort ever goes for naught. It always adds up to something. And in the fullness of time, we will see that this very moment will add up to the space that we needed for incredible things to rush in and find us. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of June 15, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. There are just 2 weeks left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class, to take these amazing classes, including Maximizing Your Intuition with McGowan, Glitz, Glam, Astrology, Timing Beauty with the Wisdom of the Universe with me, Nadiya Shah, and this incredible group of brand new speakers, first timers at Synchronicity University, as part of the July 2025 speaker series. You can learn a lot more and sign up now at synchronicityuniversity.com. The moment that Saturn stepped into Aries on the 25th of May, Saturn immediately began to move into a precise meeting in the sky with Neptune. Neptune had moved into Aries at the very end of March. Both will eventually, once we get into August, be hanging out at the first degree of the sign of Aries. But right now, as it stands, we've got these two planets now moving into a sign very different than they've known before. The sign of Aries has to do with initiative, of motivation, and of adrenaline. It has to do with trusting your first instincts and giving it your all your energy, all of yourself with sincerity towards whatever aim it is that we're hoping to manifest, that we're hoping to make better. But what we have happening this week is Jupiter. Jupiter is setting up a conversation that astrologers call a square. Now, squares are conversations of tension but they also suggest motivation. They bring with them a sense of, well, we know, we can feel, we can tell that something's off, that something's gotta be better than what it is right now. And as a result, we're taking action, we're taking effort, but it may not always be obvious in the moment, or not obvious right away, that that effort is actually going to count for something, or it's actually adding up to something good. In fact, we might often tell ourselves that our best efforts just aren't meeting the moment. It can feel as if we're pushing, or we're trying, or maybe even fighting to make something happen, but how to make it come together? Well, a lot of it feels like we're just grasping and experimenting along the way. All of life really is an experiment, and activity is actually really valuable. We don't realize that we're making progress, but progress is being made nonetheless. And so it's Jupiter that represents a more expansive understanding of self. Mythologically, Jupiter was the highest of the gods to the ancient Greeks, and he was what brought hope, what brought healing. It is the higher benefic, as the ancients understood him, in that the blessings come and they're really big. Now, Saturn was mythologically Jupiter's dad. And Jupiter had a not great relationship with Saturn. I mean, actually, Saturn wasn't that great to his kids overall. And it was Saturn who, before the birth of Jupiter, was considered the highest god. He received a prophecy that said that one of his sons would usurp him and be an even greater god than he ever was. And this freaked Saturn out. And so he began to consume his children. His children included Pluto and Neptune. Both of them were consumed. And then when his wife saw what was happening, she ran and hid Jupiter and instead gave a stone to Saturn to consume, to give Saturn something to do. And in that way, it was Jupiter that was actually raised in hiding, in a sense, but with the full awareness that this prophecy was made that he was going to be one of the great gods. Well, years later, Jupiter comes back, slices his dad's stomach open, out pops his two brothers, and Jupiter takes the throne, gives Neptune the seas, and gives Pluto the underworld. And so this story tells us so much about Jupiter and really all of these planets. I explore this in detail in one of my most favorite books, Prayers to the Sky, that I wrote. And what I love about these mythologies is they help us to understand these core energies. And these are going to be themes that we're going to see playing out now among the collective. And so we have Jupiter, newly in the sign of Cancer, a sign that Jupiter loves being in, is able to bring forward its very best, its abundant self. The sense of fulfillment is high. The sense of having everything that we need is high. But there's also an ease, a lushness that Jupiter takes on while moving through this sign for the next year. So we've got a nice long stay of this energy that I spoke about in a lot more detail last week. However, what we also have is the square that Jupiter makes to Saturn. And Jupiter can also represent countries, and Saturn represents borders. It is these two squaring that is speaking very powerfully to some of the world events that are taking place right now, because squares can represent conflict, a sense of two different powers, especially Jupiter and Saturn. An older established power that represents the establishment or some structure or some system, but even that is subjective, depending on whom it is that's looking at the players involved. And then another power that represents that sense of what's growing, what's expanding, or maybe just a population that is hopeful. Now, Neptune, like the sea, is changeable. It can feel as if just when we know where we stand with Neptune, sometimes our best efforts can just wash away. And it is Neptune being involved in this configuration that is the symbol of what might be disappointment at this time for some of us out there. For all of that, though, that feeling of uncertainty or the feeling of loss might be there. But because Saturn's there, I think a lot of us are going to appreciate that whatever's happening is healthy in some way. It's part of a more mature decision that we might be making that could be the signature of these larger energies. But with Neptune, remember, the sea is changeable, yes. Neptune himself, well, he had a strong desire to be respected, to know respect. But by the time we get into Roman times, we see that he is a god that is rarely acknowledged, rarely prayed to. And so in his desire for respect, when he felt he didn't get it, well, anybody who tried to come into the seas, he would just go wild with it. He would not allow them a smooth sail. And yet, with all the drama he caused, on the other side of it, yeah, people didn't really like that. So they didn't really want to tap into his energy consciously or seek favor from him. It was Neptune that also was consumed by his father. And that is a very powerful symbol to contemplate, because ultimately what that is an experience of trauma, is what that represents. Jupiter didn't have that trauma. Jupiter didn't have that experience. And Jupiter grew up with so much love, the love of people around him who told him again and again that he was to be the highest god of all. Neptune, in contrast, didn't grow up that way and experienced this incredibly harsh experience with his father. And it was followed by a period of isolation. And it is now, as we see this tension astrologically between Jupiter and Neptune, that we get a sense of perhaps some contemplation of what our wounds have actually been, what it is that we really need to be feeling, or maybe where it is that we are overindulging in the wrong thing. We're overindulging in directions that ultimately aren't providing us a container, aren't leading to anywhere good. Like those seas that just feel like they're going all over the place. They're so erratic, if not violent. Well, unfortunately, this might indicate on the world stage and somewhere on the planet we see some of this unusual but very harsh activity with water taking place. And so we want to send lots of healing vibes out there to everyone on the planet in hopes that everyone is okay. But at the same time, this might be metaphorical. Most likely it will be for most of us out there, in that we're feeling a lot, and again, overindulging the wrong thing. I've been thinking a lot about healing. I recently had an incredible conversation with my dear friend, Mark McGowan, who's coming to Synchronicity University. So yeah, I interviewed him. That should be up right about the time of this video, or maybe just after. And Mark and I were talking about this whole idea of healing. I don't know if I actually recorded that because we always end up talking a lot off camera as well. But it's this idea that what it is that ultimately aligns us with a connection to humanity, with a connection to a higher love. It is often that path that is the path of, well, it's like the opposite of least resistance, right? It's the harder path to take, because in order to walk a path towards having a heart open, heart-centered life, having a life where you're able to see humanity in everyone around you and whatever journeys they might be taking, you first have to acknowledge where it was that the humanity in you was not recognized. And there are different layers of that, right? We might have experienced that in our families. We might have experienced that perhaps even on a level of our structures that we grew up in, systemic issues. All of that contributes to that very feeling that might need to be acknowledged. But everybody has this in one way or another, or at least can. And while it could be traumatic, we don't have to live in that trauma. The great thing is that we can reframe the trauma to understand it instead as, well, where we were disappointed, where it was that we felt we didn't get what we really needed in a given context from whom it is that we thought we were to get it from. And now we are left with, on the other side, a feeling of loss. That loss can be unbearable. According to Freud, it is our relationship with our parents that is the deciding factor to our understanding of whom it is that God is. Our relationship with God and how we conceptualize God is often rooted in and oriented around how we viewed our parents. Now that is a hard shell to break out of, to make that separation. And of course, this isn't always exclusive, but it is where the instinct is founded. In order to overcome that, it does take challenging ourselves. And it isn't just about necessarily believing in God or the divine or however you want to understand it, but it's just this idea of believing in a higher power, a higher purpose, a higher sense of wisdom, a higher knowing, a higher path. All of these become colored by those early examples that we might have seen, whether it was within our families, whether it was in our early experiences as well. And it is not unusual, right? There's a statistic I heard, I don't know how accurate it is, that said 80% of all people out there have experienced some kind of trauma or other. Maybe it's higher than that, it depends how you define trauma, but it is the opposite path of least resistance that has us moving out of it. But what happens if we don't? If instead we decide that we are going to go with the path of least resistance, we're just going to go along, or we're not going to think about it too much, or we're going to just continue certain patterns, we're never really contemplating it. And because that's the path of least resistance, it's like a lot of stuff has to go really wrong, really badly. A lot of things have to fall apart before we realize that we really don't have any other choice but to do that work, to challenge some of those early messages, those early feelings. And that can feel daunting, so much so that we won't even contemplate it as something that we even want to consider, that we even want to walk. But having said that, what happens if we don't do the work? Well, what happens is you get a lot of people who are angry, who are miserable, or who are going through the motions. So Mark and I were talking, and I was saying to him, because he is American and I'm Canadian, so we have very different worldviews. I think a lot of times, or sometimes, because our accents are kind of the same, although I can hear a very distinct Canadian accent when I hear it. A lot of times we don't realize that there's great distinctions between the cultures, and one of them, of course, is gun control. Like, that's something Canada really prides itself in. That's something that does not really have a lot of will to change, it seems, to an outsider in the US. And I was saying to him, it seems like every time a tragedy happens, people say it's a mental health issue, it's a mental health issue. I would think that there would be at least the will to have mental health resources widely available. Like, shouldn't you have a mental health clinic like on the corner of just about every neighborhood? Like, wouldn't that make a lot of sense? Wouldn't that help? And so we discussed that, and I don't think we got that on camera because some of our conclusions are not really in line with the stuff that I like to talk about on this channel, right? Because it did go into directions of politics, and I don't like to talk about politics in my videos, because when I do, I feel like people stop listening, and that's not what I want. And I think that a lot of times some political things, not always, but often, it's like the illusion. You're not really dealing with what's really going on, and what's really going on is what's happening in people's hearts. Because what's happening in people's hearts, what's happening in their state of spirit, is determining what they are allowing in the collective, but certainly that shows up in their own life as well. And to actually have mental health clinics all over the place in abundance available to anybody who reaches out to them, Well, that could lead to a very healthy society, a very calm society. It could be one way to go about it. There are other ways as well, of course, things like community building, for example. It has been shown again and again that people who feel connected to others, they have a lot more resources, inner resources and outer resources, to navigate difficult times and difficult emotions as well. They tend to be people who end up aligning with a path of at least some reflection, some sense of being able to see themselves in others. So there's lots of strategies there, but having said that and going off here, let me say, the will, the priority to do that is a whole other thing than actually having that. And when that might happen, where people seek solutions, that is the will of the people, but it's also a personal choice that we make as well. And I say that not only because it determines how you vote, who you vote for, that's one thing, but it's also what you choose to consume in terms of media, in terms of information, in terms of wisdom, in terms of knowledge. And it determines whom it is you desire to be in the world. And whatever that vision might be, we're not always going to live up to it, especially if we're going against the current, especially if we're going against the path of least resistance. Because to go against it means challenging ourselves, having people we can be honest with, even when it's hard to be vulnerable with, having a sense of us being willing to see the humanity in ourselves, the humanity in those that maybe in our past didn't meet the needs that we had. They let us down in one way or another. And instead, to be able to do that, well, it then has us leading back and more towards that path of love and wisdom. Love and wisdom is the outcome, the willingness, sort of the default to constantly look for love and wisdom. That is something that is earned through consistency, through work. And so here we are with these profound aspects. And I feel like this turning point moment is something that we're going to see a lot of people having in one way or another. And so what that means is we might see some people losing it, right? And it could mean a lot of different things, right? It could be losing your cool. It could be losing a public reputation, some illusion that you've created. And it could be other things we might lose, resources, relationships, and so on. So we might see that, especially because Neptune is involved. And Neptune square Jupiter is often either the fear of loss or actually having to meet a loss, but not wanting to accept it, not wanting to meet it, especially when it's hard. And you add to this that both Jupiter and Neptune with that square, they're both in cardinal signs. And on their own, they just might be a dream, right? They might be ideas or wishes that are sent out there. But Saturn is involved, which means reality, which means is having to contemplate not just what people are feeling, but how is it affecting our lived experience? What's actually showing up? And where is there a collective will to do something different, or where there is not? And if there's not, don't act like there is. And I think that's going to be part of the larger conversation that a lot of us are going to be having. There is, I know, very much the tradition of demonstrations in democracies. I think that's amazing, right? If you feel inspired in that direction, go for it. I know that there is set to be some really big demonstrations. I think that it's happening in the US in particular, but maybe around the world. The weekend leading into this week is what I understand, but I might be off on those dates. But why do we demonstrate? Well, we demonstrate when it is that we want something to be different, right? And people have different motivations. Maybe they're asking for things to be different. Maybe they're sort of wanting to push back on where they feel pushed. And so people will find different ways to actually do that pushing, right? Some people will do that from within themselves, from a place of wanting to align with an energy that they want to see more of in the world. And that is completely valid. And if that means being in your own space, in your own time, that is completely valid. And then other people might be a lot more out there with their expression, and that's completely valid as well. And there can be a range of reasons, and they can seem at opposite sides. They can seem in conflict of each other, but really that's part of the motivation. There's some discontent there, and people are seeking to confront it. And some will do it within, some will do it without, but some will do it in both realms. And that's when there's that much more power. Either way, it moves us in a particular direction, and we decide what direction it is that we want the energy to move. Because ultimately, everything we do, it really does come down to energy. The energies that we put out there, the energies we embody, the energies we align with, it speaks to our default of how we're going to interact with each other, which is at the root of everything. The root of everything is how we've chosen to be with each other, how much we will see our own humanity and the humanity in others. And so it can be a challenge for some people, especially when there's been hurt, especially when there's been trauma. And now, what do you do about it? Well, I think all of these considerations, all of these questions, it's like they're going to be wrapped up in this giant ball. And what's going to happen? Is it going to become like a blob of an energy, or is it going to become like a very strong, growing ball of light, right? It could really go either way. But I would also say maybe there's both. Maybe there's room for both, but there's both. There's the potential there to do the work that change requires, to do the hard work, inner and outer work, to move the collective towards greater love and greater wisdom. But it always, always, always starts with the self. It always, always starts with the individual. And then there are going to be those who maybe want to stay in the pain because that's what they know, because that's what's familiar, because that's what makes whatever stories that they've already experienced, that they've known about, it makes them right in some way. Because the psyche cannot allow it to be wrong. And so choosing love, that isn't even an option. That isn't even a contemplation. Well, that's that blob of an energy, right? That leads us in directions that ultimately don't actually help or solve anything. And we do that in our own lives. We create misery for ourselves when it is that we're afraid of the consequences of acknowledging where we've been disappointed. Once we do that, when we do acknowledge our disappointments, there's actually a lot of power in it. There's power in the recognition, because the recognition itself means that things have already changed. Your consciousness means that karmic patterns have already broken. Jupiter on one side, Neptune and Saturn on the other. This is all cardinal energy. It can be energy that walks fast, acts fast, asks questions later. With Jupiter in Cancer, there's a lot of emotionality playing out there. With Neptune and Saturn, there's a sense of this energy that feels all-encompassing, that feels larger than the self, that feels way too big. And it's also energy of like acting before you think and not being strategic at all. That's part of what Aries represents. It's so in the moment. It's so about just being, just breathing, that the first instinct, the first impulse, well, that's what we're going to go with. Neptune is here. We might like just really not realize that's what we're doing, but Saturn is here as well. And so in doing that, the consequences can feel very hard very quickly as well. But here's the thing, there's something that adds to all this energy, and that is the fact that at the very beginning of the week, Mars will square Uranus. And this is a difficult vibration. I do want to be straightforward with you. It stirs passions, it stirs the unexpected, It brings with it an erratic energy that can show up in all kinds of ways. Now, it is Mars that is in the sign of Leo, and that is about heart on one end, right? It is about being in your truth, but it's also about pride. It's about strength. It's about wanting recognition above and beyond anything else. And the square with Uranus brings with it this wild card unpredictability factor where we affirm and assert what it is that we want, what it is that we feel we deserve. Wherever our pride takes us, we assert it in ways that have really unexpected outcomes that might actually be rather wild. Now, this is also a very powerful symbol to consider where it comes to force, right? There are different types of forces, and forces don't always work in harmony. And we see this in nature as well. We love to think of nature as this beautiful, harmonious place where everybody gets along, and the lizards and the snakes and the birds are all singing Kumbaya. And maybe for the most part, when they're in the moment, they are, but very, very often in nature, we see conflicting forces, and they want different things, or they want or have the desire to have something that the other force wants. But that is a primal instinct. And that doesn't mean that we as human beings need to live those instincts, because we have consciousness. And because of that, we have choice. And choice is powerful. The recognition of choice itself is an act of supreme love. And choice is a luxury in a lot of places. Choice is a privilege. And so we get to this moment where at the start of the week, right out of the gate, we are getting in touch with some truth. And it might stir us very deeply. It might make us mad. It might feel like it comes out of nowhere. And for some, it might feel like some truths are revealed and all of a sudden they see things really differently. But there's also this really strong energy that says we might not know what to believe. And especially with that Jupiter-Neptune energy, well, that can be a sense of learned helplessness or apathy even as well. But the great thing is that ultimately these are energies. Energies move quick. They come and go quickly as well, especially in the case of these Jupiter squares. There is a larger, harmonious configuration that is getting into gear. August 9 is a huge day. It just might be the most important day of the year, because that is when we are going to have a full moon in the sign of Aquarius, which is a sign that does have a strong duality to it, so it accepts dualities. But it's also overall a very rational energy as well, or at least it can be. And we are going to have our first intimation of a configuration that we're going to dive into much more deeply next year. And that is the near Star of David, as I'm calling it. The great sextile energy is going to be lit up that much more with additional players in the mix. And so, yeah, we're going to get quite the taste of that. That is a very mystical sign in the zodiac. And there are going to be different ways to use it. It can be used in ways that align us with love and wisdom, but it can be used in ways that really don't, that people are tapping into in order to, well, perpetuate certain narratives, certain propaganda, certain messaging. And as vulnerable as we are to those messages is just how wound up we might be, or accept things that we really shouldn't. But I don't think that's nearly as likely as feeling a sense of positive outcomes at play. So April is a huge month. I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. But for now, with a week like this, it can feel tough. It can feel hard to feel connected to or understand how the luckiest day of the year, like how is that even possible, Nadiya? How is that even coming up? Yeah, we don't always realize in the moment that what isn't working out is for the highest good of all concerned. And it certainly is the highest good as part of our own individual journeys as well. On Tuesday, Mars will change signs, moving into the sign of Virgo, Mars has spent an unusually long time moving through the energy of Leo. In fact, it was all the way back in early November that Mars first moved into Leo, stood still, went retro in Leo in December, and then in the first part of January left the energy of Leo, and then in April returned while direct in Leo. And now here we are. Mars is ready and gearing up to move on. And I think a lot of us are going to have a huge sense of an exhale, I'll tell you. And I say that because it is going to feel as if one area of life calms right down. I mean, wherever it is that Mars goes, it's like we pour more of our life force in that direction. We feel a sense of urgency, like there's something to take care of. And really what any energy wants is to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be recognized. And that's a really important thing to take into consideration, especially with energies like these. But for all that, the thing to remember is we will feel calm in one area, and very quickly we will feel heightened energy in another area. Like here's something, and we got to pay attention. Using Mars consciously helps to reduce some of his expressions that might feel undesirable. And so Mars can represent anger. It can represent a sense of frustration, a desire for change. And it can speak to being an adrenaline junkie or having just way too much adrenaline in a given moment. So much so that we lose ourselves. Because that's part of what can happen when we're just riding that very pure Mars energy. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Mars is also an energy of alignment with intention. And again, going back to Prayers in the Sky, one of my books, every chapter starts with like a Homeric hymn or an Orphic hymn, and it ends with a prayer that I wrote. And one thing that really impressed me about Mars is that this was a god that was acknowledged, that was prayed to, that people recognized as helping them, especially where it came to understanding what's really worth fighting for and what isn't. Understanding how to keep passions calm so that we practice enough emotional control so that we don't waste our life force, but rather direct it towards what it is that feels like it is true to us. It is an authentic expression of us. We see this in ancient texts, as is the case now. I think where it is that perhaps one area of life felt way high in energy, way intense, way over gear, and it calming down, I think that's going to be a wake up. But it's the switch that you also want to pay attention to. What new area of life feels like it has a feeling like there's more to do, there's more to get done, we got to do it. Now, Mars moving into the sign of Virgo. Virgo is about healthcare, right? It rules healthcare. Now, the actual caring is Cancer. That is the sign and energy of care. But the healthcare system, health clinics, we were just talking about, right? Having clinics all over the place, for example, the value of clinics, especially those that are oriented around the different ways we understand health, all of that is very Virgo, as are like daily habits, daily rituals that affirm whether it is with your health or your expertise or your excellence in what it is that we repeatedly do. And so in at least one area of life, all of us are likely to feel that sense of urgency in some way, but it's going to ask us to pay attention to what's really going on. It's going to ask us to pay attention to the details. I always think of Virgo energy as the proof is in the pudding energy. That's how I call Virgo energy. The proof is in the pudding. And what that means is having to look at, the details, what's actually going on, what's really there. It's one thing to conceptualize, right? It's one thing to believe and to state and to lead. That's very Leo. That's where we're coming from. But it's another thing to actually see what's going on in the minutia, if you will, as part of a deeper understanding of whom it is that you want to be in those small moments. That's what reveals some truth about you. Virgo as an energy has to do with paying attention. That's what's going to be called for here. Paying attention to what it is that's really going on, what it is that's actually there in a given area of life, and being strategic, how we're actually going to be effective if it is that we want meaningful change there. And so, yeah, collectively, we might be paying attention to the industries and areas I just mentioned, but personally, of course, these energies show up for us to acknowledge as well. Finally, on Saturday, the 21st of June, happy summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, happy winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, and here it is we are. We are either, depending on where you are on the planet, having the first day of summer officially or the first day of winter. When we have the first day of summer, the sun is at the height of his power. It is very powerful to consider what we want to shine light on, where we want to see more light, whether that's on an issue or a topic or something that you feel called to share. When it's less light, that's when we go into more mystical realms. It has to do with dealing with energy, knowing that energy builds into reality. So consider where you are on the planet, because no one exists in a vacuum. No one is an island to themselves. We are all interconnected, and yet we still have ourselves as individuals. And I think that is a big part of this whole Aquarian age that we are now in. And we are deciding, we are co-creating how it is that we desire this to actually manifest. Do we want it to manifest as thought control and surveillance and all these other dire predictions that have been made? Because that's possible. But it's also possible that the age of Aquarius means that we have a lot more agency to be whom it is that we really are. And we have the space to connect with others who are going to encourage us and provide us with spaces where we can be something that feels like our true selves. Either way, we move towards transformation. And either way, we decide what part we want to play in that expression. Summer solstice, well, it brings light, doesn't it? It helps us to see what's really going on, including within ourselves. And where we like it, it feels magnified. Where we don't, well, the awareness magnifies, but we're also granted a look into what doing the effort that change requires. Well, doing that consistently, how is it that we can have less of what we don't want and create space for more of what we do want? Well, that isn't just about what's happening for those people out there in the southern hemisphere experiencing the winter solstice for themselves now, but it's also about what's happening for the collective with all of these Jupiter square, Neptune, Saturn vibes that are at play. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It's a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. I'm going to say, I love the energy of, well, I know it's easy to say it's for the best. It's for the best. It's for the best. But in many ways, it really is. We can't always know through our own small human perspective, how whatever's happening is for the best. But there's power in at least being willing to consider that that might be the case. That something that feels so disappointing or some stage is being set where there's so much hope, but you can see something in you is like, yeah, I don't know about this. And you can see all of that. Now, what is that going to mean in the bigger picture? What are you now going to do about it? Well, sometimes our greatest power is to practice acceptance, to see where it is that perhaps a higher will just wants to take us. And along the way, we get to decide how much of our humanity we are going to keep. That is a huge part of the energies at play here now. I was spending time with a dear friend, reconnecting. I'm just here for a few days in Costa Rica before I move on to Mexico City, my most favorite city in the world, I have to admit to myself and to others. And so I'm really looking forward to being back in Mexico City, but I'm so happy to be here in Costa Rica as well, to see people that I haven't seen in years. I spent 3 months here back in 2022, and it was a life-changing transition for me. So it's really nice to be back and see how others have changed, how I have changed. And so I spent a couple hours with a friend. We were walking around, and then we sat down at a cafe, and we had this vantage point that was like a little high up. I don't know if I took any video of it. If I did, I'll insert it here. But and we were looking down, right? So we were like on a second floor cafe, open air. And as I was looking down, I heard my friend say, look at that. Look at all those people. And each one, an entire universe. We're all just universes, like walking around in a multiverse. And it really did take my breath away to consider that. Because when you consider that, it means that, well, if we're all living in our own universe, or as my dad says, we're all living in our own world, right? We all live in our own world. So go create your own world is something that I recall him saying to me. Well, then, however someone chooses to see what's happening outside of themselves, what's happening with other people, well, we don't have to take anything personally at all, because it's about them and what they're choosing to have in their universe. How it is that they want to celebrate and magnify and co-create with their own universe, because every universe out there, every single one, it's expanding, it's growing. It includes like the Milky Way and where we are right now in our universe, but also within ourselves, within our bodies, within our skins, within our own lives. Whatever it is that gets a second of attention, it grows. So it takes up like 10 seconds of a lifetime. Now, this is just me being metaphorical here, right? I don't have statistics on that. But as I sat there looking at this crowd, I found it absolutely shocking. I contemplated how much time I've given, how much energy I've wasted thinking about what other people are thinking about me, because it's irrelevant. It's about the world that they've created. It's about the universe that they've chosen to live in. I'm going to live in my own universe over here. But the other thing I contemplated is, yeah, we all live in our own universe, but we are united in the fact that we are all a universe, which to me means humanity, that we're all connected. And I would say that so many problems in the world, so much of the conflict, so much of the lack of peace, wherever we find it, in our homes, in our lives, in ourselves, among cultures, among nations, so much of it comes down to not seeing the humanity in whom it is that we call the other. Making ourselves one thing and someone else the other thing, and the thing that we are is separate and good and higher and better than the other thing. And that is what we call a disconnect. It is a disconnect from humanity. I would even say it's a disconnect from reality, because the reality is we're all the same. We are all universes walking around within a larger multiverse. That is what we share. And it is in thinking that our universe is the only one that matters. The people who agree in the universe I live in, they are the only ones that matter. Well, that's part of what has led to the world that we have co-created today. And so how does that change? I would like to think, and I believe that it starts just like now, in a moment that seems kind of unassuming on the surface, but really it is so profound a shift. But a lot of pieces have to fall into place along the way. And in many ways, sometimes we have to earn the right to even have that shift. Because once we have that shift, boy, is there so much peace. There is so much peace. And that is the shift that helps us to recognize the humanity in each other. That is the pathway to peace within ourselves and in the world. It is the bare minimum, but it's also the very beginning. And from there, we really become part of creating something brand new that I think would be just so much more loving, so much more wise. Now, contemplating that, considering that, well, with all these aspects, these squares, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, I think there's going to be more people than ever, at least willing to have that contemplation, willing to consider what barriers they've built up between that recognition of the other's humanity. And it starts with recognizing the humanity that we embody of our own. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded, exclusive video scopes for just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or thefutureismagical.com, links below. Saturn special horoscopes have been given to the world. Yes, they have. And so now you can access the Saturn special horoscope. Well, for all signs, if you are one of my superstars, you can log into the superstar space at silver or higher tier, and you're able to access all of them right away. And if you want, you'll also see past Saturn specials and all kinds of past specials that are there as well. Jupiter specials are forthcoming, so please be patient with me. That will likely be next week or even the week after. And again, I'm just so grateful. Really going to cross my fingers that it takes place next week in time for the Sun Jupiter conjunction that takes place that I spoke of for each sign in the month ahead video. But having said that, if it is that you'd just like to get the Saturn special horoscope as a download, you can head over to my main website, NadiyaShah.com, and it is there that you can choose whichever ones you want, and you can go ahead, make your payment, and then download the video for you to enjoy for as long as you like throughout Saturn in Aries. So I hope you absolutely love it. Thank you for your love and your trust in my work. It means so much to me. And the fact that you see my work as adding to your journey, I am so grateful for it. Synchronicity University presents incredible courses coming up this July. And as we start this week, you've got about 2 weeks left to choose your tuition rate. As always, just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from some of these incredible astrologers. So I'm going to start with my own course that I will be teaching with Synchronicity University this summer, and that is highly requested, very requested, because a lot of you out there know I love the girly stuff, right? I love being a girl. I enjoy it. It's fun. And it's just playtime for me. I've loved it since I was a little girl. My poor younger brother, I love him so much. And I used to say, okay, we're going to play. What do you want to play? I would want to play makeup. And so I would put makeup on him. He didn't like it, but he did it just so that I would then play whatever it is that he wanted to play, which I don't even remember. But yeah. Glitz, Glam, and Astrology. This is a 5-week course that's all about timing, beauty, and celebrating style. And we are going to go through all kinds of understandings of how it is that you can use the timing of astrology, the wisdom of astrology, to align with whatever it is that your unique beauty is, how you understand it, how you decide it is, and how it is that you want it to manifest. And we look at this from all kinds of angles. We're going to look at your Venus sign and your rising sign, and we're going to look at moon signs and what type of lunar energy you want to choose depending on your intention and the type of procedure that you're going to get, because the sign the moon is in really does matter with that. And we are going to have a very detailed breakdown in that regard. And we are also going to look at transits to the natal chart that speak to like energies you want to tap into, depending on what it is that you are wanting to change and what types of changes you're hoping to make. So certain aspects in the chart are a lot better if it is that you want to go for a totally different hairstyle than you've ever had before. If you want to love it, there are certain things you want to look at and to see what's at play there, so that you're tapping into the energies very consciously. And again, we're going to go through this for all kinds of different types of things that people do to celebrate their unique beauty. And this is actually a course that is information that my aunts always ask me for. So my aunts and my mom and me, like, because we're all girly girls, we like to go off to different like estheticians and things like that. We do these beauty days whenever I'm in Canada. And so my aunts will ask me when I'm not there, like, hey, what's a good day for me to get this done? What's a good day for me to go do this? And I'm able to look at the aspects and, you know, say, hey, this is good for this is good for that. Well, they ask me a lot. So I thought, let me put a course together so they have the information so they can start to use it right away. And of course, because so many out there I know, also like people that I consult with, they will ask me, what's good energy? What's the best time for me to tap into this energy or that energy? So yeah, I'm going to be showing you those techniques as part of this 5-week course. I hope that you will join me. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it really is about, as I said, whatever's beautiful to you, you decide what that is. You decide what an authentic beauty expression and self-expression, what is that going to mean for you, and to prioritize that, and then do what you want. Do whatever you want with yourself. It's you. You're allowed to be whoever you are, inside and out. And of course, there are going to be things that we don't have power over. Acceptance is one of the key attributes of beauty. But I can promise you, whoever you are right now, exactly as you are right now, has admirers, and you should be your greatest admirer. You really should, because that is about owning your unique beauty. So be in it, celebrate it, learn about it, and if you come to this course where it is that you like to do those things that help you to feel more in touch with your unique beauty, well, figuring out how to time it with the cosmos, well, that's going to be a big part of this course as well. So you can learn a whole lot more and sign up now at synchronicityuniversity.com. You've got just a short time left to choose your tuition rate. As always, just $5 a class to learn from me. Links below. Discover mediumship with the one and only Mark McGowan. I mentioned him earlier. He is just so amazing. He's my homie, as I call him. And we always have wonderful conversations on camera, but then also off camera as well. I always feel like I come away like more in touch with my own wisdom anytime I talk to him. And I'll literally ask him for like his spiritual perspective on all kinds of things, like world events, right down to like sharing things that happened to me. And he'll always say things that just take me aback with how it helps. It really does help. And this whole course that he's going to be teaching is all about discovering your intuitive gifts, maximizing those abilities, those psychic abilities, those healer abilities, those mediumship abilities. And Mark really wanted to emphasize and made it really clear to me in that interview, and has been making it clear to his own audience as well, that this isn't just a course for people who are into astrology or people who want to be mediums, but if you are a healer of any kind, however you understand that very broad umbrella, this is a program that's going to help you to tap into that very power within you that much more, to be more effective and better at what it is that you do. And it starts with you. It really does. And that's part of all that we're going to be exploring at this time. So I hope that you will join his amazing class. Now, what our conversation was mostly focused on was the asteroid Iris. The asteroid Iris. So look out for that conversation if it isn't up already. It was so fascinating to learn about this asteroid, how it shows up in our lives, and how it connects us to psychic wisdom, a mystical understanding of ourselves. And I think some of the ways in which you might understand that might actually take you by surprise, because one way that we can really be effective in our mediumship gifts and our psychic gifts? Well, it has to do with acceptance, right? Not trying to change anything, just allowing or holding space or finding a place within ourselves where we're not feeling like anything's got to be different or anyone has got to be different. But the allowing itself allows wisdom space to come in. And so much more. I mean, this is such a fascinating look at the goddess of the rainbow. So I hope that you will watch that when it's up very soon. And I hope that you'll check out his class. He really has a lovely breakdown over at synchronicityuniversity.com. And you can read that, get lots more information, get excited about the class, and sign up. You've got just a little time left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class. This is the only place in the world that Mark McGowan teaches at that level, at that low choose your tuition rate, $5 a class level. So I hope that you will join, support his work, but also you become better. You learn through his work as well. So check out his class. Links are below. Synchronicity University is proud to present an outstanding July 2025 speaker series with all new speakers, first-time speakers at our school, and you've got just a little time left to choose your tuition rate until the end of June for as low as just $5 a class. I mean, these are some amazing teachers. Some of them I've been following online for a long time, and I've been interviewing them, and I'm so excited for you to get to know them as well. So let's go through these teachers now because I think you'll enjoy meeting them. Ehsan Kazini. Now, Ehsan is somebody that I love. I love his energy. I only met him once, like back in 2016 at the ESAR conference at the time. And he just had so much love and so much support around him. And Ehsan actually has a school in Iran where he teaches Persian astrology. And that's what he's going to bring to our understanding of the moon and lunar mansions in particular. I'm so excited to learn from Ehsan because his school really has become renowned in how it is that it keeps a tradition alive, but also helps to evolve it, helps it to be something that is able to reach a lot of people. And so, yeah, he's going to be teaching. He speaks English. He's going to be teaching in English. Like I said, I hung out with him, and he's an amazing guy, very loving. And I think that this is going to be an absolutely fascinating and wonderful class. Giselle Guerrero, wow, she gave me a whole other understanding, a deeper understanding of Lilith. And she is going to help us to understand Lilith energy. I loved how she made me aware of additional myths and additional interpretations. I thought it was so fascinating. So look out for her interview. But if you join the class, you'll be able to understand the nuances of Lilith that much more, especially her expression in the sign of Scorpio and how that actually connects to the other signs as well in terms of how Lilith can be realized through you in your own chart. And Black Moon Lilith, that's what she's going to be talking about. It's a super popular topic, but she's got this wonderful perspective to bring. I think you're going to love it. Annabelle Quintero is somebody that I met a few years ago online when she took my class at Kepler College. I loved getting to know her. I started following her online, and I've loved her content all this time. So I'm so glad that she's coming to Synchronicity University. Now, she is a student of the Quero tradition, which is rooted in the indigenous people of the Sacred Valley of Peru. And it is that worldview that she helps to bring to her astrological practice. And so we had this wonderful conversation about an understanding a different worldview altogether that's so rooted in heart, that's so rooted in love, and how that informs her astrology. And so Annabelle is going to be teaching on the phases of the moon, understanding the moon phase of your chart. This is a topic that a lot of students have requested. She's the perfect person to teach it, bringing this blend of Western astrology and indigenous wisdom. Stacey Murphy is all about helping you to manifest and understanding home astrology. Now, I love this because We know that Feng Shui is part of, well, an ancient Chinese system of aligning your home with the heavens, as they say, to help you to manifest better, to manifest maybe what you want, or an easier go through life and better relationships with the people around you who matter to you. But of course, home astrology can help you to do that as well. And that is part of what Stacey is bringing here. She's going to help you to understand the power of your fourth house and the power of that Cancerian energy and the flavor it takes on in your chart, how it shows up for you, how you can use it for manifestation. This is the perfect class to have with Jupiter newly in the sign of Cancer. She's going to help you to maximize the potential there to help you to create the blessings you desire. Jenny Siek is also somebody that I've followed for a while online. Now, she has given so much love over the years to my work, interacting with me, and it's meant so much to me. So I'm just so thrilled that now she's bringing that love, that wisdom to Synchronicity University. And she's all about alchemical psychology and how that speaks to what's happening astrologically as well. But I think this is going to be fascinating because alchemy is a psychological process. We know that the ancient alchemists were those who turned lead into gold, right? That was the whole art and craft and science of alchemy. That's what it's rooted in. It goes back thousands of years. And of course, that was a very literal pursuit, right? A scientific pursuit. But especially now in modern times, we understand the psychological symbolism to that. How many times we might take what is burdensome to us, what's heavy to us, and turn it into great wealth. That's a lot of what I was talking about earlier in this video. And she's going to bring that perspective towards your understanding as well. So you can tap into the alchemical process and the power of it in your own life. Well, you can see we've got an incredible cohort here for July 2025 speaker series. You've got a limited time left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class to learn from these incredible astrologers, only at synchronicityuniversity.com, links below. Post and prosper spiritual entrepreneurship at the one and only Kepler College. I'm so glad to be back. I think this is my 5th or 6th year teaching with them in the summer season. And this is the only business class that I teach all year. Now, I have shared over the years with my own journey being an entrepreneur. I will, in about 2.5 months, celebrate 19 years as a full-time astrologer. So that's super exciting. And along the way, I've learned quite a bit. The first 7 years of my business, I lived below the poverty line in Canada, and I'm very determined so that nobody else really has to do that, especially not for that long a time. And I know that's not really even an option for a lot of people out there. And this is a distillation of so much that I've learned over the years. Now, a huge part of this class is mentorship. I am available to you. I check into our student portal every other day. I respond to messages there, and we keep class sizes really small. This class always sells out, always. And it's a good idea if it is that you think you want to join, if you want to feel a sense of connecting to really your own entrepreneurial prospects and passion within you to share whatever it is that you share, whether it's astrology or other divination methods, or whether it is that you are a healer. Anyone who is spiritually oriented, full stop, will benefit from this if you want to align with a journey of spiritual entrepreneurship. And so there's only a small part of the first class that we talk about astrology. Other than that, there's a lot of practical stuff. So the first class, we look at sort of the energetic elements and facing fears, and we look at the astrology of checking for the best times to launch different endeavors. That's called electional astrology basics that we'll be looking at. But in the second class, we look at all the technical aspects of the different social media platforms, what you need, how to utilize them. And then the third class, we give loving feedback to each other. Students have actually found this super valuable because they've seen strengths within themselves that they didn't even realize were there, that they can tap into to their advantage. And then class 4 and 5 focuses on the different ways in which to generate revenue so that you can support yourself and to those to whom you are responsible. And so if you are so inspired towards exploring what spiritual entrepreneurship might mean for you, join me at Kepler College. As I said, class sizes are very limited. This class always sells out, and I hope that you will join us. Mentorship is a big part of this experience. If you sign up now, there is, for a limited time, the option to divide your payment into 2. And there is an early bird rate that's on right now as well, I think for another week or so. So you might want to check that out also if you'd like a discounted rate. So learn a lot more over at the Kepler website. That link is below. The Great Shift and Astrology at the Omega Institute, the world-renowned iconic Omega Institute, is going to have an event that is hosted by the one and only Maurice Fernandez. Maurice is a legend if you don't know. I know you've seen him on my channel. He is one of the leading evolutionary astrologers in the world today. And he leads this event that takes place every year. And he brings amazing astrologers in. And I'm just so flattered, so grateful that he invited me to join. And I will be there talking about the Great Sextile. And I'll also be talking about Black Moon Lilith. And you'll have these other amazing astrologers. Look at this, Lynn Bell, legendary astrologer Lynn Bell. I interviewed her years ago about her book on solar returns. She was amazing then, she remains amazing. And Anne Ortili, she is somebody who I know a lot of you know. She has this strong online presence, so much wisdom to share. And we're going to have Hannah Tijuana, and Hannah is going to bring her own perspective as well. She's got a strong online base. And so you can see here, it's an incredible group. Now, the event takes place the first weekend of October, so you've got lots of time to look forward to, yes, but this is a good time to sign up. I think there might be a discounted rate, but you can look into that. But for all that, I hope that you will join us in upstate New York. Well, it's just outside New York City anyways, and it is there that we will be able to tap into this power, this potential of understanding astrology, the Great Shift, goddess energy as well with Jupiter in Cancer, and so much more as part of an impactful weekend. Learn more, sign up now, links below. Consultations are now available with me and Andy of Wise Ass Astrology over at NadiyaShah.com. I know for me, I have just a few spots left, I believe in the first part of July. It'll be later on this year that I'll open up additional dates, but for now, that's as far as the calendar is going for me. You can check out Andy's availability as well. And the process is really straightforward. You go online, you choose who you want, you access our calendar, you decide on the time slot that you want, you fill out a form giving us all the background information that you want us to know in advance. And from there, you will be then directed to make payment. Once you secure your spot, you are automatically sent a Zoom link. And I get that Zoom link as well. You go into my calendar automatically right away. And then at that time, it is that I will show up and you will show up and we will have our consultation. And it's your time. It gets to be whatever it is you want it to be. And I want to thank so many of you who've shown such enthusiasm for consultations with me. I'm so very grateful for that, that you see something in me as part of your journey. It has been so meaningful to create that safe space in which people can share, can be honest, or people can just listen if that's what you want. Like I said, it is your time, it is your experience, and it can be whatever you want. I'm there in service to you and utilizing what I know astrologically as part of that. And so, yes, learn a lot more. Sign up now for me or Andy over at my website, links below. Now, a side note about Prayers to the Sky. It has meant so much to me to see this lovely person named Elena. She has an Instagram page called theblackhole.info. I hope that you will check that out. And Elena has actually been reading some of the prayers from Prayers to the Sky, prayers that I've written. as part of helping her audience to connect with astrological wisdom, astrological knowledge. And it has just meant so much to me to see how my work is reaching people and how it affirms the love of the planets and fostering and really building that relationship of love with the planets as part of understanding yourself as a divine expression. And so she's been doing that and doing these live events on Instagram. I'm so honored to be a part of that. And so you can actually get a link below or a link if you head over to my Instagram and give her a follow, give her a like, give her some positive energy, because I know she's already given so much to me. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. Stay tuned for short horoscopes. And I'm actually going to talk about, I think I'll talk about Mars switching signs, because the luckiest day of the year and what that means, I did talk about that for you in the monthly horoscopes for each and every sign. But I'll also talk about that next week as well, because that's when officially the sun meets Jupiter, and we're going to have, of course, a new moon happening almost in tandem as well. So there's a big energy that's coming up next week that is about us sort of moving through the wisdom of disappointment towards even bigger blessings than we knew before. I'm so happy to be part of that understanding for you. So yes, stay tuned now. Short horoscopes are coming up right now. And thank you again. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. On Tuesday, Mars will change signs, moving into the sign of Virgo. Mars has spent an unusually long time moving through the energy of Leo. In fact, it was all the way back in early November that Mars first moved into Leo, stood still, went retro in Leo in December, and then in the first part of January left the energy of Leo, and then in April returned while direct in Leo. And now here we are. Mars is ready and gearing up to move on. And I think a lot of us are going to have a huge sense of an exhale, I'll tell you. And I say that because it is going to feel as if one area of life calms right down. I mean, wherever it is that Mars goes, it's like we pour more of our life force in that direction. We feel a sense of urgency, like there's something to take care of. And really what any energy wants is to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be recognized. And that's a really important thing to take into consideration, especially with energies like these. But for all that, the thing to remember is we will feel calm in one area, and very quickly we will feel heightened energy in another area. Like here's something, and we got to pay attention. Using Mars consciously helps to reduce some of his expressions that might feel undesirable. And so Mars can represent anger. It can represent a sense of frustration, a desire for change. And it can speak to being an adrenaline junkie or having just way too much adrenaline in a given moment. So much so that we lose ourselves. Because that's part of what can happen when we're just riding that very pure Mars energy. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Mars is also an energy of alignment with intention. And again, going back to Prayers in the Sky, one of my books, every chapter starts with like a Homeric hymn or an Orphic hymn, and it ends with a prayer that I wrote. And one thing that really impressed me about Mars is that this was a god that was acknowledged, that was prayed to, that people recognized as helping them, especially where it came to understanding what's really worth fighting for and what isn't. Understanding how to keep passions calm, so that we practice enough emotional control so that we don't waste our life force, but rather direct it towards what it is that feels like it is true to us. It is an authentic expression of us. We see this in ancient texts. as is the case now. I think where it is that perhaps one area of life felt way high in energy, way intense, way over gear, and it calming down, I think that's going to be a wake up. But it's the switch that you also want to pay attention to. What new area of life feels like it has a feeling like there's more to do, there's more to get done, we got to do it. Now, Mars moving into the sign of Virgo. Virgo is about healthcare, right? It rules healthcare. Now, the actual caring is Cancer. That is the sign and energy of care. But the healthcare system, health clinics, we were just talking about, right? Having clinics all over the place, for example, the value of clinics, especially those that are oriented around the different ways we understand health, all of that is very Virgo, as are like daily habits, daily rituals that affirm whether it is with your health or your expertise or your excellence in what it is that we repeatedly do. And so in at least one area of life, all of us are likely to feel that sense of urgency in some way, but it's going to ask us to pay attention to what's really going on. It's going to ask us to pay attention to the details. I always think of Virgo energy as the proof is in the pudding energy. That's how I call Virgo energy. The proof is in the pudding. And what that means is having to look at, the details, what's actually going on, what's really there. It's one thing to conceptualize, right? It's one thing to believe and to state and to lead. That's very Leo. That's where we're coming from. But it's another thing to actually see what's going on in the minutia, if you will, as part of a deeper understanding of whom it is that you want to be in those small moments. That's what reveals some truth about you. Virgo as an energy has to do with paying attention. That's what's going to be called for here. Paying attention to what it is that's really going on, what it is that's actually there in a given area of life, and being strategic, how we're actually going to be effective if it is that we want meaningful change there. And so, collectively, we might be paying attention to the industries and areas I just mentioned, but personally, of course, these energies show up for us to acknowledge as well. Now, how Mars in Virgo will speak to you in your sign depends on your sun, moon, and rising. Take all three signs into consideration and then synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And of course, there are lots more horoscopes available right now over on my YouTube channel at Nadiya_Shah and over in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or at thefutureismagical.com. Aries, whenever it is that your ruling planet Mars changes signs, well, you're going to feel it more than most. It isn't just about this brand new area of life that's getting a whole lot of energy and maybe a whole lot of tension as well, but it's the fact that that area of life becomes especially important for you. You find yourself there, and this is a part of the sky that has to do with your daily life. Your clients, customers, coworkers, immediate supervisors, your work environment, the type of work you do. It has to do with places you frequent and people that you might hire to help you in all kinds of ways, from your hairdresser to more established employees. And it has to do with how well you take care of you routinely, day in and day out. And that includes your health habits and your eating habits as well, your gym habits where that applies. So you can see having Mars here is going to bring a lot of focus and a lot of physical energy, or at least motivation to make changes. It is what you consistently do that adds up to whom it is that you are. And this is where you're focusing in on those consistencies, on the small moments, to remember your great power. Taurus, love, flirtation, what the heart wants in every way, creative fulfillment, and the children in your life. Well, wherever Mars goes, you're getting a lot of focus there. You're going to have a lot of energy poured there. And so, some of you might be getting your flirt on. This is a super passionate energy. It's like a physical wake-up call that comes through desire. It can be super powerful. but it's also where you really start to pour yourself, or at least fight for some creative vision that much more, owning your power to move a creative project in the direction that you choose, whether that's in the process of creation or sharing it. Now, this is a part of the sky that has to do with windfalls and gambling. You do want to be careful. Mars is an agitator. So, I like to say pace yourself and be yourself, but where you're trusting your heart and moving towards those things that make you happy, you can't go wrong. Gemini, home, the past, the living situation, and your family of origin. Well, this brings with it a desire to spend more time at home, be present with your family more, and go home, whatever that might mean for you. Now, for some, that's going to mean actually visiting your parents, for example. For others, that is going to mean wanting to put down roots and understand what that means to you. Others are going to want to connect with the wisdom of the ancestors, or just be home more, be isolated more, and find comfort there in the consistency. Regardless of what it is for you, it is going to be in this space that you find yourself making changes and being a lot more focused on how you can improve things. There can be tension with Mars, but there's also the motivation to do the work that healthy change sometimes requires. And that includes in these key relationships and even your relationship with yourself. Cancer, well, I think having Mars finally leave a financial part of your sky, well, it's going to help you to feel like money just calms right down. And I think that's going to be welcome to a lot of Cancers out there. It is now Mars that is moving on into a part of the sky that has to do with mind, communication, curiosity, learning, speaking. And so if you've got something to express, something to say, this is where you are giving it energy, or at least I would recommend you do, or else what happens is this energy's got to come out some way. And your expression, the way you talk to people, it might be perceived as angry in ways that you hadn't anticipated or even wanted. And so that's something to be mindful of. But this can be great for speaking your mind, especially where it is that you've been afraid to do that before. You will summon the courage. Siblings, cousins, neighbors, these might be people who come into greater focus now. You're pouring a lot of energy towards them as part of fortifying those connections. Leo, Mars leaving your sign, you will feel right as rain. You will calm right down, I will say. And this will be very welcome. I mean, yours is the sign that represents leisure. And so being able to calm down, I think is going to help you in just about every area of life. But now Mars is moving into a part of the sky that has to do with money you earn, money you spend, self-love, self-esteem. So many Leos might experience this financially, where you're focused on where your money's coming from, where you're spending your money, and your understanding of your own worth in terms of what you are generating, what you're giving the universe, and how you feel about what the universe is returning in kind. And being mindful of how you're actually spending, and if it feels like a genuine expression of you or not, you'll be able to see it. But some Leos might not experience this energy financially. It'll be a lot more oriented around the work you will do towards really fortifying healthy self-value and healthy self-love. Regardless, remember, when we have strong financial energy, it means the money you need is there. You're learning spiritual lessons in alignment with abundance. Virgo, Mars entering your sign is going to feel like a massive wake up. The body just wakes up, the energy wakes up, you feel more full of energy, or at least you should really give Mars something to do, because that's what all energies want, is a focus. And giving Mars something to do means that you are being physical, moving, ideally getting yourself into a state of sweat while outdoors is a wonderful way to use this energy to get in touch with your own feeling of power and transformation. In fact, those physical transformations can be especially strong now. See, the thing is, if you don't use this energy towards the change you desire, then what happens is random situations, people that you're close to, they make you mad, and you have a way of like not having as much patience with them. And that's not going to be good overall, not going to make you or anybody else happy. So stay focused on yourself and towards the changes you want in just about any area of life. In many ways, you'll be quite the unstoppable force. Libra, this is where Mars moves into the sign just before yours, and it's about what's happening on levels of soul, psyche, and spirit. And it will be over the course of this time that you are likely to feel that much more in touch with what your dreams are telling you, what's happening in the dream space. It might be hard to get rest as much as you would like, but this can also be wonderful energy for focusing in on meditation and riding the mysteries, as I like to say, aligning with a sense of what's possible for you, where it is that you might be going. And what I really love about these energies is it helps fortify a relationship with spirit. You feel it that much more strongly, and in the most ideal sense, you just might find this passion for recognizing magic everywhere you go. Scorpio, friends and group endeavors. This is where you're spending a lot more time in social situations, in gathering with other people, whether it's professional, personal, or otherwise. Now, sometimes with this, it can feel like a friend is being an aggravator. It's hard to be patient with them. It's hard to see the wisdom in some of their actions, and that really is okay. You do your best, you surrender the rest. In some rare cases, it might really feel like someone ticks you off, and you get to decide if that's going to mean anything going forward and into the future. For all that though, that energy might also show up where you're working within groups towards some professional outcome. And so you'll get to decide whether or not that effort is worth it to you. It is in connecting with others that you see the variety of expression, how others can empower you, but also how it is that they might frustrate you as well. Sagittarius, career, social standing, life purpose, and your understanding of a higher vision for your life. Now, this is Mars. Mars has to do with fighting, and it's fighting for what you want, or at least pouring yourself towards what it is you hope to achieve. What I've found with this overall is people tend to have a deadline. That's what shows up here. There's something you got to get done. Now, whether that is within an organization or workplace, or whether it's guided from within, something that you feel you got to do and you want to get done by a certain date. Yeah, there's that deadline, and you're moving towards it with direction, with passion, with focus. And that can give you a real sense of accomplishment, but it's really important to remember to do your rest and surrender the rest. That's a big lesson with Mars. It's not so much about thinking about outward outcomes and what it is that you're manifesting, but rather what you have control over. When you do that, you will connect with a sense of empowerment that can have you making great gains. Now, being straightforward with you, if you know you have a boss who's overbearing or is in some way frustrating, is demanding, even toxic, well, some of those tendencies might stir under this vibration. But for all that, if that does happen, it's all part of helping you to remember your own power and how you're going to use it. Capricorn, long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters are covered here. And so, yeah, with Mars here, you're that much more motivated to get out in the world, to be in the world, to connect with the world, metaphorically or literally or otherwise. Now, if you're involved in a legal matter, it's probably going to take more of your attention and more of your energy. If you are in an institute of higher learning, whether you work there, you're a student there, or you've been thinking about being a student there, again, it's getting a lot of your time. You're pouring a lot of yourself and your energy in that direction. For all that though, this can be a very empowering time to contemplate what you believe about the world, philosophically, spiritually, intellectually, or otherwise. It is about, in some way, understanding how you fit in a larger sense, but also what values and beliefs it's going to be that are going to guide your life. Aquarius, profound change, truth, transformation, and wealth. And so this is one of the other financial parts of the sky. And when we have such strong financial energy, the money you need is there. You're going to be engaging possibly financial institutions, or you're thinking about wealth building and what you can do in a larger sense so that you can move towards a feeling of wealth. That might be financial for many, but that could also be emotional or spiritual wealth as well. This part of the sky having to do with transformation and change, you're very focused in that direction with Mars, and whatever it is you desire to change, getting to the root of it will be that much easier, so that you're facilitating transformations of all kinds, psychological, physical, or otherwise, from the inside out. Pisces, partnership, love is covered here. Those one-on-one alliances, they could be business or personal, but just know when Mars is in your opposite sign, on the one hand, you feel like pouring a lot of your energy and attention towards another person. If you're open to meeting someone new, you're going to likely be a whole lot more courageous in the pursuit, a lot more motivated, a lot more dedicated. If you're in an established bond or even in a business partnership, just know that this can bring with it a layer of some frustration. You feel angry at this person much more easily. And so it is up to you to actually do the work of figuring out whether it's you or them or both. Ultimately, this is powerful motivation towards change. And that, when joined forces with another, can help a relationship evolve, a partnership to become something more than it was before. But of course, the opposite is true as well. If there's problems there already, they're going to show themselves, and you get to decide how you're going to address them. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.